Welcome to the Mass Effect Lorecast, the podcast where we explore the vast universe of lore behind the Mass Effect games. We'll talk about all the details you may have missed, ask the hard questions, and more. Welcome, everybody, to the Mass Effect Lorecast. This is our first episode of a brand new show. I am your host, Tom or Robots, and you might know me from the other Lorecast shows like the Fallout Lorecast, Elder Scrolls, Dungeons & Dragons, Cyberpunk. There's a bunch of these shows, so if you're coming over from one of those shows, welcome. We're very excited to be doing this show because it's such an awesome universe, and there's all sorts of fun things coming down the line for Mass Effect. And with me, my co-host, and we'll call him our topic expert, is Kung Fu Kangaroo. Kung Fu Kangaroo, what's up? How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic apart from some technical issues, but I am happy to be here. Mass Effect is one of my favorite games of all time. My experience with Mass Effect goes back to 2007 when my brother picked up this quirky looking, sci-fi shooter game that he didn't think really anything of. And he came home and he tossed it on my desk and he said, "Hey, knock yourself out." And then I spent all night playing it.
Wow.
And I remember I definitely spent way too long listening to the codex. I don't know if there's anyone else out there that did that, but I certainly did.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of people did. That was one of those things I dabbled in a little bit. I think I poked around with pretty much all the different bits and pieces of the game. I came to let's discuss this before we get on with the rest of the show. And why don't I tease a little bit about what we're doing? First, we're going to talk a little bit about ourselves. I'll let you guys know who we are, why we're doing the show, why we might be the kinds of people you want to listen to doing a show like this. And then we're going to get into some topics. First, our first topic for the show today will be teasers and clues from the teaser trailer, some of the things that we can kind of tell about what might be coming for the next Mass Effect game based on that. And then our big topic on the second half of the show will be the question of if Shepard is alive or dead. And we have some evidence in both directions, and of course would love to hear your opinions about this as well. There currently is a channel on the Robots Radio Discord if you'd like to, share your thoughts with us and join the community. We've got a bunch of people on that Discord talking about the lore behind lots of different games. And there's also the Mass Effect Lorecast Twitter account, which you can reach out to us on. And I don't remember the official. I need to go look it up again. What is the official location of that?
At Mass Effect Cast.
That's right, because the Lorecast didn't fit. Mass Effect Cast is it. So real quick, my background with Mass Effect was coming from previous BioWare games. I had played other BioWare games, and when Mass Effect was announced, I remember it coming. I remember thinking like, "Wow, the graphics look really cool." This was like Xbox 360 generation type stuff, right? This was one of the early games for that, wasn't it?
Yeah. 2007, I think, is when it was released.
Yeah. So I remember that being a thing. I remember, for the most part, reviews were pretty positive about it, right?
It was positive, but when Mass Effect 1 came out, it didn't have an immediate cult following. And I think most people who played it back then can remember, if you were into Mass Effect 1, you didn't really know that other people were. But you loved it a lot.
Right.
So
the internet was
the way it was for a few years.
The internet was a different place. This was also during like the beginning of podcasts. I remember listening to shows like the Giant Bombcast talk about this back in the day and talk about like the stories and the way the characters were and getting through. And some of the mechanics were rough in the first Mass Effect game. But since then, of course, we've gotten 3 other games we have the first trilogy and then Andromeda, which was, clearly the least well received of all the Mass Effect games. And the hopes are that the next Mass Effect that comes out will remedy some of those issues. But the improvements in 2 was the one that I dug the most. And I think a lot of people feel that way.
Yeah, I think 2, Mass Effect 1 was the perfect RPG. And
the perfect RPG. Wow, that is a really hot take. A lot of our Fallout fans are going to argue with you about that.
I want to put that in some confines. So it's the perfect RPG for what it was trying to be. And then Mass Effect 2 came along, and it became instantly more of a shooter with a cover-based combat system. I love Mass Effect 1, but I got to be honest, the combat was a little wonky.
It was. It's true.
Compared to 2 and compared to 3, and I love the way that they wrote in the explanation for why technology seemingly went backwards in the Mass Effect universe when they had guns that didn't need ammo, and then all of a sudden they all use thermal clips. Thermal clips, right?
Right.
So I love that they wrote in the explanation for that. But yeah, Mass Effect 2 became a shooter game, and it was a cover-based shooter similar to Gears of War, I think. But EA did that pretty well.
Yeah, and then 3 came up and wrapped up the story. And just for 100% transparency on the show, Kung Fu Kangaroo is the topic expert here. He's the one who has played through all of the games in the series. He's spent hours and hours in the codex. He's dug into the wikis. He's done a bunch of research and those kinds of things. I'm here because I love the lore of games. I do many shows about the lore of games, but I'm not an expert when it comes to Mass Effect. I am somebody, on the other hand, that has a very strong background in philosophy and religious studies and psychology and those kinds of things. So I like to take, especially like the moral quandaries and things that come up in games like Mass Effect, and discuss those as well. And I'm going to be chiming in. I'll be doing some research on these, and I'm hoping to play through them again when the remastered version comes out. But just to be 100% clear, I don't believe I finished 1. I didn't get all the way to the end. I finished 2. I started 3, but got 2 hours in and then quit. And I'm sure our audience is going to be like, no, you can't. No, you quit the game. And I was like, I didn't get it when it came out. And by the time I got it and it came out, there were other games that were drawing my attention more. And that's it. I didn't play 3. I'm going to have to remedy this when the remastered version comes out. So I will promise you, when that comes out, I will play through it. So you got that. And then Andromeda came out, and I never did play through it either. So I'm interested in learning more about the depth of the universe, but I've played the first 2 enough to know a good bit about the history and the races and those kinds of things. And we'll be researching alongside Kung Fu Kangaroo as we get through these topics as well. So I'm kind of there for the ride for those of you who are in my seat and know some things, but are interested in learning more. And Kung Fu's there if you are in his chair and, spent hours and hours in the codex. And if you're brand new to this and you're jumping in with, say, the remastered trilogy, and you're not too worried about spoilers, then this could be a great opportunity for you to join in on that conversation as well. So this show could work out for a number of different people, and we represent 2 of those groups. So so there you go. That's basically our background. Did I sum that up pretty well?
I think you did. And Commander Burton here in the chat has a pretty good point that some people have played a lot of the games, and they've played them like maybe I have over and over again. But then there are the comics and the novels and the external media. There's a ton. And that can be daunting, I think, for a lot of even diehard gamers. I have just started reading Ascension. I had it in my library on Audible, but I'm just now picking it up. I'm going to listen to it. It's my goal to become even more thoroughly acquainted with the lore through the external media that Commander Burton here mentioned.
Nice.
So I'm going to be working on that while Robots here might pick up another playthrough.
Well, I catch up on some other stuff as well. So we've got lots of time. There's so many topics to discuss. There's the universe here is huge. And like Kung Fu mentioned, we are live right now. We're on the Robots Radio Twitch channel, twitch.tv/robotsradio, and it's at 10:30 p.m., 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific. So if you'd like to join us for our live shows, you're welcome to come and join us. And there are people in chat right now chatting along, sharing their thoughts on some of the things we're talking about. So that's the setup. We will be doing this every week. We're going to be bringing you the best content and asking, some of the tough questions, putting you in the shoes of some of the people, some of the dilemmas and decisions they had to make, filling you in on the background of some of the races, the situations in the universe. And I especially am interested in the topics of things like what led to the events and the way the universe was set up at the very beginning of the game, when humans were new on the spatial world. Like there's a whole background of past races and their influence on the universe. And there's a lot of questions to be, explored with all of that, plus all the new games coming out. So there's a lot of stuff for us to talk about. So this week, we're talking about the teaser trailer, and I'm going to cue this up. I'm going to put this up on screen here. And for those of you listening, it's only about a minute and a half long. You can, if you want to listen back through it, you won't be able to see the video. But if you're watching this live, you'll be able to see the video here. And let's just take a look at this, because there are some clues inside this video for things that might give us a sense of what's coming. So here, let me just go ahead and put this up on the screen and adjust it. There we go. And here we go.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched.
Roger, copy. Eagle Houston, you're a go for landing, over. Sure, station. Unknown vessel approaching. We need first contact protocol.
Humanity now stands as partners of the galaxy.
Hostices away. Bad speed.
Is anyone receiving this? We've lost contact. Do not leave meetings or contact. Space.
So that's it, man. The music in that is just great. I bet it's good to listen to on your car stereo or wherever you're listening to the podcast. So take us away, Kung Fu Kangaroo. There's some hints in here, right? I don't know as much as you do about this universe, but watching this, I'm noticing like things in the background, things in the foreground, and I'm going, that's that, and that's that thing. And wait, how does this work with this? So what's going on here? What can we surmise?
Yeah, so let's address the blue elephant in the room.
The blue elephant in the room.
Liara. That is very clearly Liara in the trailer. And Liara, for those of you who don't know, is a main character. She is a popular love interest of both male and female Shepards in the original Mass Effect trilogy. Now, Liara's presence in this is pretty important because in Mass Effect 1, she was barely more than a child. That's what the game says, even though she was about 106 years old then. And yet she's clearly recognizable in the trailer, meaning she hasn't aged that much for an Asari. So it can give us some clues about the setting. It can give us some clues about when this might have occurred. We know at least that it has occurred within 100, 200 years of the end of Mass Effect 3. Now, I say within 100, 200 years because that's in Asari's lifespan. She clearly doesn't look like a matriarch yet, which was the name for the older Asari. But that's the first clue that we see Liara's alive. I think for a lot of original trilogy fans, that tells us, okay, we're returning to the Milky Way.
Right.
That's the other big thing.
So for people who didn't jump into Andromeda, that actually was in Andromeda. That was in a different galaxy. That's right. And it takes so long for the people who are on the arcs to get to Andromeda. It takes 633 years, I think, for them to get there, that it's just not practical to suggest that Liara would somehow make it to Andromeda. So she's almost certainly in the Milky Way. Right. Okay. So we're back in the Milky Way. We're dealing with circumstances most likely within her lifetime. And she doesn't look that old. So, I mean, really, this could be as much as, a very short time period. after.
Right.
Mass Effect 3.
And it's definitely not before Mass Effect 1. Because as they stated in Mass Effect 1, she's a child, basically. I mean, she's basically legally an adult for an Asari.
Right.
So I really doubt this is taking place when Liara is technically a child.
Okay. So what else about this scene stands out?
So if you can go back to the picture with Liara up there, and there is a few people in the background, one of which is a Solarian. And another one looks like he could be a Krogan or maybe a Turian. So if depending on if your Shepard cured the genophage, I think seeing a post-disease Krogan race could be great. That could be really, really cool. But I think the presence of these three races, I think the third figure is a little ambiguous. You can kind of make that out on your own, but I'm pretty sure you can tell there's a Solarian and a Krogan.
So the first one, you're thinking the first one is a Solarian, and the third is a Krogan from left to right. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I think that that's probably true. Maybe the center one could be human. It could. I mean, it looks more humanoid than either of the other two. But then there are a number of other races that are more human shaped. So
that's right. Yeah, and I think that this would indicate, or at least strongly suggest, that this is again in the Milky Way, where all of these races are.
Right. I'm having fun on screen, enhancing. I'm enhancing this picture as big as I can in the background. Of course, it's blurry. It doesn't actually get less blurry, but you guys can see it here. Okay. Yeah, that's an interesting catch. They're all getting onto some sort of ship, it looks like, or at least have exited the ship.
If I remembered it right, they are on a mud skipper. I think that's what the name of that ship is called. And it looks somewhat similar, if people remember, to ships that were seen around. Now I can't remember the planet's name, of course, but it's where the Thorian was in Mass Effect 1. It looks similar to ships that were there. And ships that we saw in other places in Mass Effect 1, meaning this is, again, technology from the Milky Way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this looks like the ship in the trailer that's flying through space toward the end of the trailer. So I think we're to assume that this ship landed on this planet or moon or whatever it is, and that these people got out of it. Yeah,
that is, I think, what we are to assume. It looks like an exploratory vessel. Clearly, there's no huge weapons on it. So they're looking for something, right? And what could that something or someone?
Well, what could it be? Tell me.
Well, I think it has to do with the N7 plate that Liara picks up and so nonchalantly dusts off. And the timestamp on that, if you're following along, is 118.
Yep.
So I think right, there it is on screen. So the N7 plate is so on the nose to me. How often have we seen N7 armor that is not associated with Commander Shepard? I mean, as awesome as James is, I doubt the next one is going to be all about James. So, and the other N7 character, of course, in the series that was so prominently displayed was the Pathfinder's father.
So you don't think it's either of them?
No, clearly not. I don't think so, because the Pathfinder's father was, of course, in Andromeda. And he, spoiler alerts, if you have not played Andromeda, you might not want to listen to this, but the Pathfinder's father, of course, perished in the very beginning of that game.
Right.
So I don't think it's the Pathfinder. I don't think it's James Vega.
Interesting. Yeah. And it's clearly broken. So it looks like they're finding the remains of something that was destroyed.
That's right. And Liara she was introduced to players in Mass Effect 1 as an archaeologist. So digging up remains is probably something that she's pretty accustomed to. Mm-hmm. Now, if we can go to the next one.
Sure.
The next big clue that I saw.
There's show notes. Here's the image.
So the next big one that I saw was you can see 3 moons here. There's 3 moons, and one of those moons in the picture of Liara is quite close to the planet. I don't know about you, but that doesn't say Earth to me.
No, this is not an Earth image. They are on a snowy planet. No, obviously Earth has snowy areas on it. And that close moon almost has a green tinge to it where the light hits.
Yep.
And the second moon has kind of more of an orangey reddish tinge, and the third moon is very far away. But yeah, this doesn't look like Earth.
No. And it looks quite cold and quite icy.
It's Hoth. They're on Hoth.
So
this just in.
When I saw this,
Star Wars, Mass Effect, same universe.
Crossover. Where it turns out Commander Shepard was actually a Skywalker.
Oh, God. He was a Jedi the whole time. Oh, man.
But I did think, it's not Earth, but so then what could it be? So then I started racking my brain for where would an N7 plate be on an icy planet that has 3 moons?
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of only one option there, and that option is Alcara. And
okay, so remind us, what is Alcara? Yeah.
Alcara is where the Normandy SR-1 was shot down, and Shepard's body was recovered for the Lazarus Project.
Oh, man.
In Mass Effect 2.
Oh, all right. So, yeah. No, you're hitting on stuff that I am remembering now as we talk about this, because so what does that mean?
So what does it mean? It means maybe are we going to witness a game that takes place in the 2 years that Shepard has passed away?
Oh, so this is like a in-between clole.
Right. In between the events of Mass Effect 1 and 2.
Does that make sense?
Or inside?
Well,
2. No, does that make sense?
Well, I mean, okay, so from like a storytelling perspective, if you put a Mass Effect game there, and we know it contains some of the characters from the other games, then it's going to be dealing with some of the issues that they dealt with, right? The main plot of the game will have some sort of evil bad guy climactic point that ties into and connects to those other games in the main story. But we know how the story, we know what happens by 3. We know that the odds and the universe is at stake and all of these, like, we know how that stuff comes to a head. How do you make a game that's as important in the story and epic than the game that comes after it chronologically that we already know the story? Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I can see that would be difficult.
Yes.
But if you were to put this as an event that is shown in the game having taken place during this time period, and maybe you play through some of that time period, but then move on to another time period, why does the game only have to exist in one time period? It doesn't. Sometimes in a story, you'll start here and you'll be like, the point of view character is this person in this part of the story. And then now you move to another part of the story. And now the point of view character is over here, right?
That's right. And so that kind of brings me to my next point. Because time is a huge concept in trying to decode this teaser. So apart from the fact that Liara is clearly not wearing a facial breathing apparatus, and Alcara has an atmosphere of methane and ammonia, so she would not be able to breathe that. So for all you people that are wishing that this is not true, that this game is not going to take place inside Mass Effect 2 while Shepard's dead, I think you can breathe a sigh of relief, because if we go to the next one where there is a destroyed Mass Effect relay back earlier in the trailer.
Right. Yep.
Well, for everyone who played the original trilogy, in all of the endings, the Mass Effect relays look destroyed. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe in the extended cut DLC, they kind of explained that all of the Mass Effect relays were irreparably damaged or destroyed. And I know for a fact that the destroy ending, which was my personal favorite, the destroy ending definitely destroyed them.
definitely.
And so because we see a Mass Effect relay that's destroyed, that's a very golden indicator that this is going to be after Mass Effect 3.
Yeah. And that's my initial thought, having seen, the trailer and the fact that you fly through, they very specifically fly you through a destroyed relay, okay, that's a, hey guys, remember when this happened moment, right? But that doesn't mean that they couldn't If the ship that's flying through space is that ship that gets on the ground and then picks up the N7 insignia, then the assumption there is that these two things aren't happening at different times. They're happening at the same time, and all of these events are happening post Mass Effect 3. So, is there something else to find from the wreckage, from Commander Shepard's wreckage that happened, in the beginning of Mass Effect 2?
Well, there could be. There could be, there could not be. And as far as I remember, in Mass Effect 2, there were about 20 crew members who perished along with Shepard. Mm-hmm. Joker was not one of them. Joker escaped.
Right.
But Navigator Presley did. So, interestingly enough, the insignificant quest of collecting dog tags in Mass Effect 2, when you go back to the crash site, could become pertinent. It could very well become pertinent to examining the location. But there's also another sign in this teaser.
Okay.
And it's located at the timestamp 1 minute and 5 seconds. Mm-hmm. And I know we're jumping around here.
No, that's fine, because all of this stuff with me. is important for different reasons. So, yeah.
So I think this is a pretty big sign, a pretty big clue. There's a Reaper that's visible in the background of the teaser. And if you weren't watching super close, then you might have missed it.
Right. I'm going to play this part again so you can see it in motion.
Yes. Now in this part, you can see Liara climbing what appears to be a mountain, but look behind her. Because there is a pretty important detail that, like I said, is easy to miss.
Right.
Now, if you can pause it.
Yeah, it's paused now. So you can see in the distance, you see what looks like the glow of the sun through like a snowy or misty background, but shadowed in that mist looks like something that is shaped very similar to a very large arachnid or something, right? Multiple legs, gigantic in size. What does that sound like?
That's true. And at 50 seconds, I believe, and you'd have to listen to the audio, but at 50 seconds in this teaser, we hear the unmistakable foghorn-like sound of a Reaper's weapon being armed.
Yeah, here we go. Let's listen to it.
Is anyone receiving this? We've lost contact. Do not leave meetings across.
Is that it? No. That was 47 seconds to 55.
I did not hear anything on my end.
No. Oh, you can't hear it coming through your side. I don't know if that's the right timestamp, but if somebody wants to double check that, let us know. I'll take your word on it though.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the Reapers being destroyed, that's, in my opinion, a dead Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
So if we all think back to Mass Effect 3, and we think about what endings we chose, there was only one that resulted in the Reapers dying.
Okay. So for those of us who didn't play through Mass Effect 3, which ending is that, and what does that? That was
the destroy ending.
Right. So how does that conclude? Like, what is the culmination of that? What is the decision that is made?
Sure. That was so Shepard ultimately in the destroy ending listens to the spiel from the Catalyst and says, I just don't care. I'm still going to end the threat of the Reapers. And along with it, it's going to come with a heavy price. The price being the destruction of all AI in the universe. Mm-hmm. And so if you had a soft spot for Legion, if you had a soft spot for the Geth, and you really did like to ponder, are the Geth people, now that they have been unshackled, if that was what you chose.
Right.
Then this was a very heavy cost for your Shepard to pay. But if you determined that any live Reaper was a bad Reaper, then you might have chosen the destroy ending. And so it would have destroyed the Reapers and all AI in the world, or in the galaxy, excuse me. And with that, that's the only way that the Reapers are going to die.
Yeah, I remember this being highly debated among video game websites, podcasts, the community. There were a lot of people who got to the end of the game and they were like, I have to do that. And they were like, I don't like that. I don't like having to make that decision. And it was highly contested.
Yeah. And you know what? I applaud the game developers and the writers for this decision, because up until that point, I think most players view destroying the Reapers as the Paragon option, right? I think most players think that is the heroic good guy thing to do, destroy the Reapers.
Right.
And then at the end, they really mess with your mind. And now all of a sudden, that's the red option. The blue option is taking control of the Reapers. So yeah, I really do applaud the devs and the writers for that kind of total flip of script and get you to think about outside of, okay, this is Paragon, so I'm doing it. This is Renegade, so I'm doing it.
Right.
But get you to think about what you really believe the right thing is.
Right. That's interesting. I love moral quandaries. This whole, like there are all sorts of questions that come about in these games. And one of the reasons why I love playing through games like this is because they force us to actually, in some way, I mean, obviously I'm not Commander Shepard, you're not Commander Shepard, but we still have to make that decision. Right. And so it's like role playing that decision in our own lives in kind of a little mini way. And so you get questions like, the railroad question, like if you're at the railroad tracks and you've got to switch lanes for the track and you see a train car coming down the track and it's aimed at a person and that person is your mom. I mean, it really doesn't matter, but somebody you're related to and somebody important to you, let's say it's your mom, and you have the option of switching the track so that the train car doesn't hit your mom, but it now takes out 3 random other people you don't know. What do you do? Right? Like, obviously, those 3 people don't mean anything to you, but that's 3 lives compared to 1 life. These are the kinds of moral quandaries that we get, right? Like, is AI people? What's the difference between biological personhood and synthetic technological personhood? If things have self-awareness, does that make you a people? Do you have the right to make decisions for things that have self-awareness? How do we treat animals? Like, all of these kinds of questions are really interesting moral quandaries.
And the Elusive Man was the perfect person to play devil's advocate. He was the perfect person to shine the mirror in Commander Shepard's face and say, are you going to be stuck in your ways, seeing the future down the barrel of a gun like Captain Anderson, and really getting in your mind that way and thinking, well, hold on a second. Maybe all these things that I've been doing haven't been the smartest or right way to do things. And if I can remember right, that's the only time a game ever did that to me, where I really had to pause and think, okay, where am I going with this?
Right. I love that because I think that's a wonderful moment to have. I think as human beings, we don't have those moments enough. There's a word for the word fell out of my brain. This happens late at night. I lose words. But there's it's like right on the edge of my brain. There's a word for when you have to hold 2 different concepts in your head at the same time and they butt up against each other and they don't work. You can't both be this and this at the same time and be consistent, right? You can't.
Cognitive dissonance?
Cognitive dissonance. That's the word. That's the word. Yes. Cognitive dissonance. You can't say, I am a vegan and then also abuse your pets. Like, right? Like the reason why you're a vegan is so that you don't hurt animals, and yet you're hurting animals. Like, right? Like that. But this is a thing we do as humans all the time. Not that we abuse pets as humans all the time, but we often live with cognitive dissonance and don't even realize it because we will say, I am this kind of person. But then given the opportunity to make those decisions, we don't actually make them, or we make the opposite, and
that's
this,
right. I think
humans do this all the time.
We like to fancy ourselves a certain kind of person until maybe some moments challenge that. And then when we feel that those moments are challenging our preconceived identity, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good at all.
No. And oftentimes we hold these conflicting beliefs inside ourselves and we don't know they're there until they're pointed out. And when somebody points it out, it's often easier to negate the cognitive dissonance by coming up with some sort of justification rather than changing our beliefs or our actions in order to ramify it. We justify it. Well, that's fine because of this. Well, it still doesn't mean that there's not dissonance there between those 2 concepts. You're just
right. Then you get into moral relativity.
Right. And, so anyway,
that's a different podcast.
We could shoot all the way down that path. Maybe we'll hit some of those topics as we get to them. But So yeah. So where does this leave us?
So we know now, because of the clues from the teaser, we know that the next game will be during Liara's lifetime. Mm-hmm. In fact, it will be during the earlier part of her lifetime. She looks pretty young.
Yeah.
It's going to be sometime after Mass Effect 3 because those relays are destroyed and that Reaper's dead. And it's also going to be inside the Milky Way.
Okay.
All of these things sound like a sequel to me.
It does. It does. Well, so what about the planet, though?
The planet, that is a real toss-up. In fact, I don't think that it's Alkera. I think it has some eerie similarities to Alkera. It could very well be. It could be, but because of that ammonia, methane atmosphere and Liara easily breathing it, I don't think it's Alkera. I've been racking my brain to try and figure out how Earth might get extra satellites post Mass Effect 3 because that's so desperately what I want to believe, but I just can't. And so I think the planet might be a completely new setting.
What if there was some sort of technological advancement that allowed her to breathe that without having to wear a mask?
That would be some writing magic.
That would be some writing magic, but
would be some writing magic, but it's possible.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay. Well, okay. So we're going to leave that there. I want to hear what our listeners think. Please write us, let us know, or show up during the live show, kind of chime in maybe on the next episode. Let us know what you think about this. Do you think we're hitting this on the head? Do you think that we're right? Do you think there's maybe some other stuff we haven't noticed yet that would clue us in a little bit more to what's going on? But that's awesome. It's time to move to the middle of the show. We're going to take a little break. We'll be back in a little bit with our main topic. Is Shepard alive? We've gotten a little bit hinting at that, but let's talk about that a little bit more.
Message coming in. Patching it through.
I am sovereign, and this station is mine. I like the sound of that.
All right. This is the middle of the show. This is the part of the show where we get to thank you for listening to our show. First of all, thank you for being here, for joining us on this new adventure that we're going on. And if you would like to help us out, because launching a podcast is actually a pretty tricky thing to do. It's hard to find new listeners. You don't show up in search results. It's really difficult to grow a podcast. So if you want to make sure that we can keep doing this, then we've just got some very simple things to ask you for. And it's not going to cost any money. We're not saying, hey, give us money. We're not saying anything like that. Very simply, if you have an iTunes login, if you have an Apple login, and you can leave us a rating and review on iTunes, then on a future episode, we will read out your 5-star review and say thank you to you directly for that. And secondly, if you enjoy this episode and you enjoy the show, and you know anybody else that would be into the show as well, please tell them about it. Just share the show with some friends. If everybody who listens to the show shares it with some friends and everyone else shares it with friends, the show will continue to grow and we will have a wonderful listenership, and we'll be able to do this and keep bringing you more content. So that's all that we ask. That those two simple things would mean the world to us, and we would very, very, very much appreciate it. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. And we're going to get back to the main topic because I am ready to talk about Commander Shepard.
Spit it out, or are you trying to build suspense?
You're so dense, sir. Obviously, I do not know as much about human relationships as I thought.
All right. It is time to talk about, I love those voice clips. I love hearing their voices again.
That sample is so good.
So what do we have for evidence here? Is Commander Shepard alive? Obviously, spoiler territory. We noted at the beginning of the show. If you haven't played through these games or some of these games, there's going to be spoilers. So for the most part, we should assume that he's dead. Is that?
Not so fast.
Or not? Like, okay, so take me through this.
Not so fast.
What do we have here?
What we want to know is our character that we loved and put so many hours of our lives into creating, days even, and forming, is this person still around? And the answer is complicated. And so there's several reasons why and why not Shepard may be alive.
Mm-hmm. No, pause real quick, because I want to just ask a personal question, because we're talking about Shepard, and I didn't put this in the show notes. I'm just spitballing here. Did you have a male Shepard or a female Shepard, or did you play multiple times and do both?
So I never played a female Shepard, and in fact, when I replay through the series when Legendary comes out, I was planning on playing a female Shepard because there's some bits of dialogue that never come up with male Shepard.
Right. Yeah. And that's one of the cool things about the game is that, you know, you have different relationship options and things like that. So I did the opposite. I played a female Shepard because the male Shepard looks like a douchebag. I'm gonna get angry messages. That's not the main reason. Obviously you could customize your Shepard. You can make him look however you wanted, and a lot of people like the way the Shepard looks. So anyway. But I played a female Shepard, a lot part because I often enjoy playing somebody who's very different from myself, so that I'm forced to role play in these games, and I don't just turn into me in the situation, right? And secondly, because the voice actor who does her. I forget her name.
Jennifer Hale.
Jennifer Hale is tremendous.
She's fantastic.
And I was like, I got to listen to Jennifer Hale do this. So I'm going to obviously be playing as her. So, yeah. So that was my background. But sorry, go ahead.
Speaking of voice actors, Mark Meir liked one of my tweets one day, and I about had to change my pants because Mark Meir, for everyone who doesn't know, Mark Meir is the male voice of Shepard. And check out his Twitter. He does some really cool things. He's super into Dungeons and Dragons and this other nerdy stuff and stuff you would never guess just by looking at the texture like model for male Shepard in the game.
Yeah. Side note, little known fact, even though the show isn't up on any podcatchers yet, he's a big fan of the show. That's not true. I'm just making that up, but I can hope. All right, so let's get into the nitty gritty here. It's complicated. Why is it so complicated?
Sure. So one reason why Shepard is alive in the Mass Effect 3 Destroy ending, Shepard gasps for air after all is said and done, but you only get that scene if you did everything in a certain way. If you got your military EMS rating, I think it was, or readiness rating, up to the maximum tier. And then after the credits, after everything settled, the camera panned and it showed a chest with N7 on it, and it's definitely Shepard. And he gasps, he or she or they, whatever pronouns you'd like to prescribe to your Shepard.
Sure.
Shepard gasps for air.
Okay, so we assume we're looking at a dead body at that point. Again, for people who haven't played through this, like we think we're looking at a dead body, and there's no breathing, and then all of a sudden, breathing, right? So that makes you go, "Oh, they're alive."
It would make sense why Shepard would be dead, because Shepard just endured like galactic explosions. So.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I know when I endure galactic explosions that I'm usually dead afterwards. So.
Right. So it would make sense why Shepard would be dead. However, in an explanation of the necessity of the extended cut DLC, which came out as an explanation itself to the events of Mass Effect 3, that's how critically acclaimed Mass Effect 3's ending was and how much argument it caused. But when the extended cut DLC came out, there was a BioWare employee, Tully someone, I think was the employee's name, but they confirmed on an official BioWare forum that Shepard does indeed live in that ending.
That seems pretty confirmational.
Right. So
assuming
that's confirmation
that that's the same ending. And if the Reapers, or I'm not the Reapers, the Reapers are blown up, and then also the relays, right? Then we're looking at the Destroy ending, and that all ties together.
Right. And so that's the very basis of the question, is Shepard alive? First, we need to identify, is there any ending Shepard can live? And that is the only one. The other ones, Control, Synthesis, Shepard's not alive. Shepard in the Control ending becomes something greater than himself in a very creepy type of monologue after the game. Shepard goes on and on about how Shepard has become a god. And how, and please excuse me, I've been using masculine pronouns for Shepard, but that's because that's
you played
what my
through.
experience
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
But so Shepard goes on and on about how Shepard had become a god through the Control ending, something greater than humanity, something greater than all living beings to protect them. And in the Synthesis ending, Shepard combines all synthetic and organic life as the framework for the new DNA. So Shepard is disintegrated. There's no way Shepard's alive. So there's only one ending in which Shepard lives. That's the Mass Effect 3 destroy ending with enough readiness. Now, the armor that Liara finds, like I said, is almost always associated with Shepard. So it seems just cruel and misleading for EA BioWare to show the N7 so prominently in a teaser just for that game to have nothing to do with Shepard. I don't think that's the case. So that's another point for yes.
Okay. All right. Counterpoint to that would be, what if it had to do with Shepard's remains and a story that was based around something having to do with recovering his remains or something like that?
Yeah. And, I think there's a point that goes hand in hand with that so why would Liara be trying to gather Shepard's remains?
Right.
Well, like I mentioned earlier, Liara is a popular love interest for both masculine and feminine Shepards. So it would make sense why Liara is searching for Shepard, just like how if she was a love interest in Mass Effect 3 in the Destroy ending, she lowers her plaque before putting Shepard's name on a wall to commemorate his death or her death. Liara lowers the plaque, looks up as if to say, not yet.
Yeah.
And then the Normandy takes off as if on a mission to find Shepard. And so, man, that would tie in to that teaser like no gap at all.
Right. Not to mention, like, even if you didn't romance her, having positive relations with your crew, let's take a look at like any good sci-fi fantasy story, right? Like, you lose your leader or a beloved member of the crew, and then the crew vows, we will find them, we will put their remains to rest. Like they're our friend. We've gone through all this. We fought this all together to not at least search for their body. Like that kind of story is pretty typical.
Yeah. And, a lot of people might be asking, why Liara? Why is Liara, if it's not about the love interest thing, why is Liara the chosen squad mate who makes it into the external media to tease the next game? And there might be a pretty simple reason for that. If BioWare and EA don't want to de-canonize anyone's endings, if they don't want to decide that, your decisions resulted in Miranda's death and yada, yada, yada. If they don't want to delegitimize anything, any of the decisions you made along the way, Liara's the choice. Because although, I didn't know this until looking it up, but apparently no matter what you do in any of the games, Liara's the one constant. She can't die. You can go ahead and try, but she can't. She can't die.
Interesting. Because I'm not going to explain it this episode because we've still got a few more points to get through, and I don't want this to be like a super long first episode. But yes, there are certain deaths that occurred in my playthrough of Mass Effect 2 that were very poignant and ironic, and I've always wondered, like, did it have to work out like that? But yeah, that's interesting that she's one of the characters. Is she the only character that can't die?
I don't know if she's the only character, but
she definitely can't. Yeah.
She definitely can't, and she has impenetrable plot armor.
Okay.
So
that seems important then. Yes. Therefore, if she shows up in the teaser, then it makes sense that she would be the one to show up in the teaser, because obviously she still exists for everybody's version of the story.
Could she have been purposefully preserved for posterity, for future games? I don't know. That's something only the writers know. Maybe it was just happenstance. But another reason why I believe that Shepard is alive has to go back to Liara. And it's because, like I mentioned earlier, Liara couldn't possibly be in Andromeda. It took the Pathfinder and the Settlers too long to get there, meaning that she's in the Milky Way, meaning that this is the Milky Way after Mass Effect 3, and there's a destroyed Reaper. And there was only one ending in which the Reapers were destroyed.
Right. So all
And
that
there was
stuff
only one
connects
ending
through.
in which Shepard lives.
Right,
So
right.
it all connects.
So if she's not in Andromeda, they're telling a Milky Way story, and so all of these things point to that being the ending. So therefore, this story. Yeah.
That's right. And so now I'm going to go with no. Here's a point why.
Okay. All right. So after all of that, I'm on the verge. Like, this is very convincing. I'm like, yeah, totally. He's totally still alive. He's got to be still alive. But there's still reasons why he's not alive. And I've got, like, my first thought on this is just from the perspective of we've already told his story, or their story. Let's use non-gender. Like, we've already told their story. Commander Shepard's story has been told. It was wrapped up, right?
Right. And BioWare was
bring him
quite
back?
clear about that.
Yeah, why bring them
They were
back?
quite clear about Mass Effect 3 before it even released. BioWare was very clear. This is the ending of Commander Shepard's story. This is it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so maybe he's not alive. Maybe he's not alive. And to break the fourth wall, and in fact, to shatter it, Shepard's survival canonizes one of the endings. As a company, BioWare and EA have taken great, enormous steps not to step on any player's toes in external media that they have produced for the game. Like actively including masculine and feminine, Paragon and Renegade depictions of Shepard in tweets, in Facebook posts, in YouTube videos, in promotional art, everything. They have taken great steps not to decanonize anyone's experience, because if you're a company producing an RPG, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to make someone feel like their choices were less than optimal?
Right.
In fact, Andromeda's entire setting is evidence of being inclusive to everyone's Shepard, because it made Shepard irrelevant.
Right. They didn't need to deal with that issues. They could talk about other things.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Shepard's survival just would, it would decanonize the control and synthesis endings to Mass Effect 3. And that's two of the four options. There's a fourth option where you can reject the catalyst's options and say, no, we can win this war conventionally. Spoiler alert, it doesn't end well. It doesn't. You lose. And there's a beacon that Liara leaves for the future. But so Shepard's survival would decanonize half the possible endings and maybe half of the entire fan base. So for business decisions of bringing the maximum amount of fans to the series versus alienating some from the original trilogy, the trilogy which gained Mass Effect's cult following, that wouldn't be good for canon storytelling. Then
that would also mean, though, that continuing with her story post ending of Mass Effect 3 would force them to canonize an ending, even if Shepard's dead.
It would.
So that would mean that what we're seeing there is not her, or is not her post Mass Effect 3, which would go back to maybe this is during Mass Effect 2 theory.
Yeah.
But we see the blown up Reaper, and like, how does that other stuff fit? So wait. Okay, so this is like a puzzle. This is like a logic puzzle, right? If blown up Mass Effect Relay means all Mass Effect relays, and blown up Reaper means that ending, then we have to end up with a story that is post Mass Effect 3, which means that they have to canonize an ending. That they're willing to do so. Or they're somehow going to avoid that whole topic and yet still have a game that happens after that in the Milky Way without ever addressing that. I don't think that's possible. Unless
the new player character was the Volus, who was convinced that he was a god. I forget his name. But Sixth Sense here says in chat that Knights of the Old Republic, great game if anyone hasn't played it. Knights of the Old Republic has a canonized ending, though, also made by BioWare. So that could and probably would happen eventually. And I'm so glad that Sixth Sense brought it up. Drew Karpyshyn wrote the story of Knights of the Old Republic and the epilogue book. Karpyshyn was one of the original writers of Mass Effect 1. And so for all prolific readers and fellow writers out there who played Mass Effect 1 and then noticed a distinct difference in the writing of Mass Effect 2, that might have been why.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it could have been Mass Effect 3, but somewhere along the line, Karpashin left. He left the project to work on something else. So thanks, Sixth Sense, for bringing that up. That's very, it's fourth wall breaking, but it's important to note. But about canonizing and decanonizing endings, I would personally love to hear from fans, maybe in the chat or through email, if they would play a game that decanonized their chosen ending for the original trilogy.
I think from a business decision standpoint, BioWare, let's break the fourth wall again, right? Not an in-game, in-universe standpoint or viewpoint on this, but BioWare is a company that has to make financial decisions in order to stay a company and survive and continue making games and employ the people that they're employing, right? And make money for their board or whatever. If they're between a rock and a hard place and they're going, Andromeda didn't do as well as we wanted it to, and people weren't super into the whole going onto another galaxy thing. What did people like about Mass Effect? People liked Shepard. They liked Shepard's story. They liked it being in the Milky Way. They liked it having to do with Earth. They liked the characters that were there. Wouldn't it make more sense to continue that story? And if the one thing that gets in the way of that is, yeah, but we told them we're not going to canonize an ending. That seems like the likely thing that gets, like shot and put in the closet. Like if all of those guys are in a room together and that's the guy who goes, but wait, we decided not to canonize an ending. That's the guy that gets thrown out the window, right? And the rest of the guys at the desk go, all right, onward with Mass Effect. Now that we got rid of that guy. That's kind of the way I feel about this, is that, like, for the most part, people will forgive that if they can get more Mass Effect that they like. Whether that includes a living or dead Shepard, they still get more Mass Effect that they like, right?
Yeah, and I agree. And I was thinking about that, I would love to see the internal emails between, like, the writing team and the business guys. It's got to be hilarious. But going back, I think there's a couple, final points that bring us back around into the question, is Shepard alive? Liara's presence, because she cannot die, does not canonize any choice at all. It doesn't canonize anything. And so when you think about that, you're like, wow. So she makes a cameo appearance in Andromeda. It's very clear that the writing team has wanted to keep Liara around for some reason.
Right.
And like we've already mentioned, there's a Reaper in the background of the teaser. And Mike Gamble, that name might sound familiar to some fans because he was a producer on the Mass Effect trilogy. Well, he confirmed this via Twitter, and he said that is indeed a dead Reaper.
Well, there you go.
My final verdict.
Yeah.
My final verdict. Shepard is alive.
So this is where you're falling on it. Shepard is alive.
Shepard is alive.
Are we going to be able to play as him?
I don't know.
Or them? Not necessarily.
I have no idea. That is a separate topic, but Shepard is alive because they have seemingly canonized the Destroy ending in which Shepard lives.
Okay, so according to Mike Gamble, Destroy ending will be the canon ending, even though they said they weren't going to canonize an ending. They've decided to do that. And that means that he's still alive, because that's what Liara is looking for.
No, I don't want to put words in Mike Gamble's mouth, but what Mike Gamble said was that isn't dead, a dead Reaper. And so what we can extrapolate from that, like you just said, was that.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So
Destroy ending.
Here's what I would expect. Alive. If I was the person, if I was in charge of the writing team, and I was like, okay, this is where we're going. Destroy ending, legit. This is the teaser. Whether Shepard is alive or not, I would expect that we do not play as Shepard. I would expect that we play as another character who is going to tell their story over the next trilogy or whatever. And there's a continuation of the crew, the people that are involved in this, and you are somebody. Someone mentioned in chat, maybe Daydream Daydreamer Nick in chat, like, oh, I don't know if I'm looking back through, I'm missing stuff. Somebody in chat mentioned it a little while ago. There's a lot of stuff going on in chat that, what if Shepard's kids? What if you're Leora taking care of Shepard's kid and bringing him to go, find their father or the body of their father in order to put him to rest, or, something like that. And maybe you play as his child. Maybe. I think it would be interesting if you're just somebody else, because in Mass Effect 1, you're just somebody, right? Like you pick a little bit of details about your background. You end up becoming an important person. You've got to climb your way up. You've got to make these decisions and prove yourself to a lot of people who don't think a human can be as important as you are. Right. Like,
yeah. And, choosing the background was one of my favorite things to do in Mass Effect 1. You choose a background, you choose how you grew up, you choose a psychological profile off of things that happened in Shepard's career before Mass Effect 1. And so for that reason, I don't think that Liara is going to be the next player character, because so much of her background is already decided.
Right.
It's already decided. It's already written.
Right. And the freedom of these games is to role play yourself, your own character, in the way that you want, rather than going, well, I've known Liara over 3 games. These are the decisions that she would make. Like, that's not the same thing. Right. Like, right. I think the success formula in this is give us a universe that's familiar, give us some characters that come back, that give us warm fuzzies to talk to them again, but let us make a new character. Let us be somebody new. Let us pick a new background. Let the future be 100% open, and whatever Shepard's decisions were, those were Shepard's decisions. We have a new situation with a new person and new people that we're going to meet, and it's going to be important and it's going to be huge, and we're going to uncover more things about the universe, and there's going to be there's going to be fallout from Shepard's decision, both good and bad, and we're going to have to live with that, and we're going to have to figure out how to move forward, and that's going to be the new game. I think that is the formula.
Yeah. And I wouldn't be surprised, with Shepard being alive, I wouldn't be surprised to see Shepard as an NPC in the game.
Sure.
Very easy. They ask you a question at the beginning, did you play a masculine or feminine Shepard?
Oh, yeah.
And they use the default, texture from that.
They had the technology to pull things in from other games if you previously played them on the system or whatever, right? So they could can even do that. What was it with the Dragon Age games? You played through that browser where you answered lots of questions to say, like, this thing happened, what would you do? And you could answer the same things that you did on previous playthrough, and it would build a file that you could then connect to your game, right, through the connection to the website or whatever, that would then let you pick up from where you previously played through. So yeah, they've got ways to do that.
Post Mass Effect 3 Shepard could be like this sage for advice, for the new player character. And that would be cool. I'd love to see that.
Right.
I think that would be, and like letting Shepard just settle down and like seeing Shepard in a more domesticated role, I think would do like Shepard justice, because at this point, they has earned it.
Yeah. And they don't even have to be in tip top shape either. It's not like we have to bring them back into like full-fledged, regular, fit and ready to go Shepard. Like maybe they're wheelchair bound. Maybe they're barely hanging on to life through, being plugged into machines, but they're there to say, carry on. We've still got to do our best. Like they're there to inspire you and or whatever.
Right. And let's not forget that, wheelchair bound, gray haired Shepard, Liara is still going to look the same. Yeah,
that's true. This is like some different elf and man Lord of the Rings stuff going on here. Aragorn gets old, but yeah. Yep. Oh man, I'm very interested in this now. All right.
So I think next game likely to be in Milky Way after Mass Effect 3, perhaps in a new setting, a few new planets. Shepard is alive, but is not the player character.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're going to have to find out what happens. I would love to hear other people's thoughts on this, because somebody's going to come out there and say, well, what about this thing you guys didn't think about? And we're going to go, and our brains are going to explode again. Man, that's great. All right. So where do we go from here? What do you think we're going to delve into next week?
So next week, I don't know about all of you listeners and everyone in the chat. But next week, I think the First Contact War would be a great place to start delving into a weekly topic of lore. The First Contact War is, of course, when humanity encounters the Turians for the first time. The Turians refer to the First Contact War as the Relay 314 incident.
So it was a war for us, but it was an incident for them.
Oh, yeah, it was a police action for them. And you got to love because that's what the writers called it. The writers literally referred to, in the Turian perspective, as it being a police action.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
The irony isn't wasted at all.
Yeah, that's great. So, okay.
Yeah, I think the First Contact War would be great.
Yeah. Let's get into the First Contact War. There's tons of stuff that we can talk about. Again, I would love to hear your thoughts on any specific topics you think would be really cool for us to cover. We'll probably take things in fairly broad strokes and get more and more into the nitty gritty details as this continues to go on. The same way that you would say in teaching a lesson about something or going over details. So again, there's tons of stuff to get through. So I'm very excited about where we're going to go with this. I hope you guys come along for the ride with us. And thank you for being here this week. Thank you, chat, for being here. Thank you for listening to the show. Make sure that you come back and join us live for the future episodes. Again, that's twitch.tv/robotsradio. And this show will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific on Sunday nights. At least that'll be the schedule for this part, going forward. And that's what we got going on. And also, again, just a reminder, if you like the show, please tell your friends, leave a rating or review, let people know, hey, this is a good thing. You should check it out, especially if you're getting ready to jump into the remaster version and you want to be thinking about all the juicy lore bits and all of these questions. And who knows, as we get closer and closer to the launch of the new game and more video, teasers and things coming out. So we'd love to have you along for the ride. Kung Fu, do you have anything going on that you want to share before we head out?
Yeah. So first of all, I just want to say that I'm really psyched about this Lorecast. I'm very happy to have it started. And from here on out, I'm going to be replaying the entire Mass Effect trilogy ahead of the Legendary Edition release. And that's May 14th. And I'm going to be streaming it. So for anyone that would like to watch and maybe decide whether or not they want to get the Legendary Edition, go ahead and follow me on Twitch. That's kung_fu_kangaroo. And you can go ahead and add me on Xbox too. That's just KF_kangaroo. I'm going to be streaming that on Twitch when I can. Probably going to be most weekdays at around 6 p.m. Central, 7 p.m. Eastern.
Awesome.
I'm going to be replaying the entire Mass Effect trilogy from scratch. And so, you know what? I'm going to start that tomorrow, and we're going to do it from scratch. We're going to make a brand new character. I'm not going to do the default Shepard appearance. So whoever wants to be around for the character creation, that's always fun. That'll be a blast. How about you, Tom?
Can I make a recommendation when you do this?
Yeah.
Can you make the goofiest looking character possible?
Oh, yes. Ugly Shepard? ugly Shepard.
I want like messed up looking ugly Shepard. I don't remember the boundaries of the character creation, but I'm pretty sure you could get some really goofy looking stuff in there.
It's not like Oblivion, which is ridiculous. But yeah, you can get some pretty hilarious looking Shepards. And I'll just commit to it now. This playthrough is going to be a female Shepard or a feminine Shepard. So
awesome.
That one is not negotiable. That is a new. That's the rule for that.
Good. Very cool. Yeah, go check him out on that stream. That's gonna be fun because you can talk about lore stuff while you're playing through the game. There's all sorts of fun conversations that can be had while playing back through those games. I'm going to save my playthroughs until the remaster version comes out because I want to experience them in all their beautiful, refined graphical glory, and will eventually probably be streaming those as well at the Robots Radio Twitch channel. So you guys are welcome to come join me there for that. I regularly stream games in the afternoons, 3:30 p.m. Eastern, noon 30 Pacific, during the days, and then sometimes in the evenings as well. And if you want to check out any of the other Lorecast episodes or shows, if you're into Fallout, Elder Scrolls, Dungeons and Dragons, or Cyberpunk, those all happen in evenings as well. Sunday nights, Cyberpunk happens before this show, and on Thursday nights are the Elder Scrolls and Dungeons and Dragons Lorecasts. So come hang out for all the fun shows. Go check out Kung Fu's playing of Mass Effect. and be here for all of it. There's a huge community. Robots Radio is a big community. We're doing lots of things. We're having regular community get-togethers on Saturday. We just played Among Us. There's all sorts of fun things to plug into. So join the Discord. There's a link in the show notes. You can just search Robots Radio Discord. It comes up on the top of Google search. I mean, there's all sorts of things you guys can plug into. So we love that you're here listening to this with us. Thank you so much for joining in. And man, I am excited to get into more and more deeper stuff with the lore and some of the things that I don't know about yet. I don't know what I don't know. And that's what's fun about this, is that like there are things that Kung Fu knows about this stuff that I don't know yet, that are just going to be awesome, juicy things about all these different aliens and the history of the universe and all that stuff. So I'm very, very excited. Thank you for being here. Kung Fu, this was an awesome episode. Thank you for being here, buddy.
Hey, loved it. Had a blast. Thank you, chat, for being here. Always love interacting with chat, and I will look forward to interacting with chat during the streams.
Awesome. We'll see you guys next time. And until next time, stay safe out there. Don't crash your spaceship or whatever. I need a better exit for that. All right. We'll see you guys later. See ya. Thanks for tuning into the Mass Effect Lorecast. We'd love to hear your opinion and thoughts on the lore of Mass Effect. Reach out to us on Twitter at Mass Effect Cast, or check out the Robots Radio Discord. Also, you can send us an email at masseffectlorecast@gmail.com.
You've been listening to a Robots Radio podcast. Smart shows for interesting people. Check out all the shows at robotsradio.net.